The phone that changed everything. Dr. James Mitchell sat in his office at St. Mary's Hospital in Boston, reviewing patient charts on a quiet Thursday evening. At 32 years old, he had built a solid reputation as one of the best emergency medicine physicians in the city. The clock showed 11:47 p.m. when his phone buzzed with an urgent message from the maternity ward. "Dr. Mitchell, we need you immediately. Critical delivery situation. Patient in severe distress. Room 204. James grabbed his white coat and sprinted toward the elevator. His heart pounded as he mentally prepared for whatever emergency awaited him. He had handled countless critical cases during his 8 years of practice, but something about this particular call made his stomach twist with an unexplained anxiety. A face from the past. The maternity ward buzzed with controlled chaos as nurses rushed between rooms. Head nurse Patricia Wells met James at the entrance, her face tight with concern. "Dr. Mitchell, thank goodness you're here. 29-year-old woman, 37 weeks pregnant, severe preeclampsia. Blood pressure dangerously high. Fetal distress. We need to perform an emergency cesarean immediately." James nodded, scrubbing his hands at the sink. "What's the patient's name?" "Rachel Thompson." "Well, Rachel Hayes now. Her husband is on his way." The soap dispenser slipped from James's hand, clattering into the sink. Rachel. The name hit him like a physical blow. It couldn't be the same Rachel. Thompson was a common last name. Boston was a big city. But deep in his chest, something told him he was about to face a ghost from his past. "Dr. Mitchell? Are you all right?" Patricia asked, noticing his sudden pallor. James forced himself to focus. "Yes. Let's go." When time stood still. The moment James pushed through the doors of room 204, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. There, on the hospital bed, writhing in pain and hooked up to multiple monitors, was Rachel Thompson. His Rachel. The woman he had loved more than life itself during their 4 years together at Boston University. The woman who had broken his heart into a million pieces 5 years ago when she suddenly ended their relationship without explanation. Her chestnut hair was plastered to her forehead with sweat. Her green eyes, the same ones that had once looked at him with such love, were now clouded with pain and fear. But when their eyes met, recognition flashed across her face. "James," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the beeping monitors. "Rachel." Her name came out strangled, caught between his professional duties and the flood of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. For a frozen moment, they simply stared at each other. 5 years of questions, hurt, and unresolved feelings hung in the air between them. The nurses moved around them efficiently, but James and Rachel existed in a bubble where time had stopped, memories come flooding back. James's mind catapulted back to their college days. He remembered the first time he saw Rachel in their sophomore biology class. She had been arguing passionately with the professor about environmental conservation, her eyes blazing with conviction. He had fallen for her intelligence, her compassion, and the way she threw her head back when she laughed. They had been inseparable for 4 years. Late-night study sessions that turned into deep conversations about their dreams. Rachel wanted to become an environmental lawyer. James was set on medical school. They planned a future together, talking about the house they would buy and the family they would raise. Then, during their final semester, everything shattered. Rachel had called him on a cold February evening and told him they were done. No explanation. No discussion. Just a firm, tearful goodbye. When James tried to reach her, she had blocked his number and disappeared from campus. He later learned she had taken a semester off and moved back to her hometown in Vermont. Professional duty calls. "Dr. Mitchell." Patricia's sharp voice yanked James back to the present. "We need to move now. Her blood pressure is spiking." James snapped into professional mode. Whatever personal history existed between them, right now Rachel was a patient in critical condition, and he had sworn an oath to save lives. "Rachel, I'm going to take care of you and your baby. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? His voice was steady, commanding, the voice of a doctor who had performed hundreds of successful procedures. Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face. I trust you, James. I always have. The word struck something deep inside him, but he pushed the feeling aside. Patricia, prep for emergency cesarean. Get the anesthesiologist here now. Check fetal heart rate every 30 seconds. The room exploded into organized activity. James examined Rachel quickly, his hands steady despite the emotional storm inside him. Her blood pressure was dangerously elevated at 180/110. The baby's heart rate showed signs of severe distress. An unwelcome arrival. Just as James was about to wheel Rachel into the operating room, the door burst open. A tall man in an expensive suit rushed in, his phone still pressed to his ear. Finally. I've been trying to get here for the past hour. Traffic was terrible, the man said, barely glancing at Rachel before turning to James. I'm Derek Hayes. That's my wife and my baby. What's the situation? James felt his jaw tighten. So this was Derek Hayes. Rachel's husband. The man she had chosen over him. Derek was everything James wasn't, polished, wealthy, and dripping with the kind of confidence that came from old money. His designer watch probably cost more than James's monthly salary. Mr. Hayes, your wife has severe preeclampsia. We need to perform an emergency cesarean immediately. Her life and the baby's life are at risk, James explained, maintaining his professional demeanor. Derek barely acknowledged the gravity of the situation. How long will this take? I have an important conference call at 7 in the morning. James stared at him in disbelief. Rachel let out a soft whimper of pain, and something inside James snapped. Mr. Hayes, your wife could die. Your baby could die. I suggest you postpone your conference call. His tone was ice cold. Derek's face reddened. Now listen here, I don't appreciate your tone. Do you know who I am? My family practically built this hospital. I don't care if your family built the entire city, James shot back. Right now, the only thing that matters is saving 2 lives. So either be supportive or get out of my way. Racing against time. Rachel reached out weakly and grabbed James's hand. The touch sent electricity through his entire body. James, please. Save my baby. Promise me. James squeezed her hand gently. I promise, Rachel. Both of you are going to be fine. As they rushed Rachel toward the operating room, James caught Patricia's knowing look. The nurse had worked with him long enough to sense when something personal was at stake. In the operating room, James transformed completely. His hands moved with practiced precision as he prepared for the procedure. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Robert Kim, administered the epidural while James reviewed the ultrasound images one final time. All right, Rachel. You're going to feel some pressure, but no pain. I'm right here with you, James said, positioning himself at the surgical site. Rachel's eyes locked onto his above her surgical mask. In them, he saw fear, trust, and something else. Something that looked dangerously close to the love they once shared. James made the first incision, his years of training guiding every movement. The surgery was complicated by Rachel's elevated blood pressure and the baby's distressed state. Every second counted. Heart rate dropping, announced the monitoring nurse. We need to move faster. James worked with laser focus, carefully navigating through layers of tissue. His mind blocked out everything except the task at hand. Not his history with Rachel. Not Derek pacing in the waiting room. Not the 1,000 questions burning in his chest. Only the surgery mattered. Almost there, he murmured. Come on, little one. Your mom is waiting for you. With a final careful movement, James lifted a tiny baby boy from Rachel's womb. For a heartbeat, The room held its breath. Then the baby let out a strong, healthy cry that filled the operating room with relief and joy. "It's a boy," James announced, his voice thick with emotion. "A healthy, beautiful boy." Tears streamed down Rachel's face as a nurse placed the crying infant on her chest for a brief moment before taking him to be cleaned and examined. James watched the scene, feeling something crack open inside his chest. This should have been their moment. Their baby. Their family. But it wasn't. Rachel had made her choice 5 years ago, and now she had a husband and a child with another man. As James carefully closed the surgical incision, he forced himself to accept reality. Rachel Thompson belonged to his past. She was Rachel Hayes now, and no amount of wishful thinking would change that. Or so he thought. What James didn't know was that in the coming hours, Rachel would reveal secrets that would turn his entire world upside down. The truth about why she left him. The truth about her marriage. And most shocking of all, the truth about the tiny baby boy who had just entered the world. Some endings are really just new beginnings in disguise. The long night of truth. 3 days had passed since the emergency cesarean, and James found himself unable to stay away from Rachel's room. Officially, she was under the care of Dr. Helen Foster, the hospital's head obstetrician. But James kept finding reasons to check on her during his rounds. A blood pressure reading here. A post-surgical examination there. Each visit was a careful dance of professionalism masking deeper emotions. It was 2 a.m. when James made his unofficial visit to room 204. He had just finished a grueling shift in the emergency department, but something pulled him toward Rachel's room like a magnetic force he couldn't resist. The hallway was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors and the occasional shuffle of night shift nurses. James paused outside Rachel's door, debating whether to enter. Through the small window, he could see her sitting up in bed, cradling her newborn son. The image was so tender, so beautiful, that it made his chest ache. He knocked softly before entering. Rachel looked up, and a smile spread across her tired face. "I had a feeling you would come," she said quietly, adjusting the baby in her arms. "You always did work the late shifts." James stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I would check on my most interesting patient." "Is that what I am? Interesting?" Rachel's tone held a hint of playfulness that reminded him of the girl he once knew. "You've always been interesting, Rachel. That never changed." James moved closer, peering at the sleeping infant. "How's he doing?" "Perfect. He eats well, sleeps in short bursts, and has the strongest grip I've ever felt." Rachel's voice was filled with maternal pride. "I named him Oliver." "Oliver," James repeated, testing the name. "It suits him." The courage to speak. An uncomfortable silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Rachel broke it. "James, we need to talk about what happened. About us. About why I left." James pulled up a chair and sat down, his heart racing. This was the conversation he had imagined 1,000 times over the past 5 years. In some versions, he yelled. In others, he walked away. But now, faced with the actual moment, he simply said, "I'm listening." Rachel took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "That last semester of college, do you remember how stressed I was? How I kept getting sick?" "I remember. You said it was just anxiety about graduation and law school applications." "It wasn't just anxiety." Rachel's voice cracked. "I was pregnant, James. I was pregnant with your baby." The words hit James like a physical blow. The room seemed to tilt around him. "What? Rachel, what are you saying?" "I was 22 years old, terrified, and completely unprepared. We had our whole lives planned out. You were about to start medical school. I had been accepted to 3 top law schools. A baby wasn't part of the plan." Tears rolled down her cheeks now. I was so scared, James. So incredibly scared. James felt like he couldn't breathe. Why didn't you tell me? We could have figured it out together. I wanted to. God, I wanted to so badly. But then your mother found out. My mother? James's voice rose slightly, causing baby Oliver to stir. He lowered it immediately. How did my mother know? A mother's interference. Rachel shifted Oliver to her other arm, her expression pained. I had gone to the campus health center. Your mother, Dr. Patricia Mitchell, was doing her monthly volunteer consultation there that day. She saw my file. James's blood ran cold. His mother had always been overprotective, ambitious for him, determined that nothing would derail his promising medical career. But he never imagined she would go this far. She called me into her office, Rachel continued, her voice barely above a whisper. She was kind at first. Understanding. She said she knew we loved each other, but that a baby would destroy both our futures. She offered to pay for everything. The procedure. Counseling afterward. Everything. And you agreed? James couldn't keep the hurt from his voice. At first, no. I told her I needed to talk to you first. But then she said something that changed everything. Rachel looked directly at James. She said that if I truly loved you, I would let you achieve your dreams. That medical school is brutal, and adding a baby and a struggling girlfriend to the mix would be too much. She said I would be the anchor that drowned your potential. James stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. That wasn't her decision to make. It wasn't her life. I know that now. But back then, I was young and scared and convinced she was right. So I did it. I terminated the pregnancy, and then I couldn't face you. Every time I looked at you, I saw what we had lost. What I had taken from us without even giving you a choice. The revelation explained so much. The sudden coldness. The abrupt ending with no explanation. Rachel hadn't stopped loving him. She had been drowning in guilt and grief. The husband who wasn't there. James sat back down, his mind reeling. And Derek? Where does he fit into all of this? Rachel's expression hardened slightly. I met Derek 2 years after I left school. I had moved back to Vermont, was working as a paralegal, trying to pull my life together. He was charming, successful, and persistent. He pursued me relentlessly. Did you love him? I thought I did. Or maybe I just wanted to believe I could love someone else. Anyone else. Because loving you hurt too much. Rachel looked down at Oliver. Derek offered stability. Security. A chance to have the family I had thrown away. But James could hear the unspoken word hanging in the air. But Derek isn't who I thought he was. The charm was a mask. Underneath, he's controlling, obsessed with status and appearances. Nothing I do is ever good enough. I'm not thin enough, not social enough, not from the right family. Her voice turned bitter. Do you know what he said when I told him I was pregnant? He said good, now people would stop asking questions about why we didn't have children yet. James felt anger rising in his chest. He wasn't even here when Oliver was born. He was in New York, closing a real estate deal. When the hospital called him about my emergency, he asked if it could wait until after his meeting. Rachel laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's who I married, James. A man who prioritizes deals over his wife's life. The impossible question. James reached out and gently took Rachel's hand. The touch felt both familiar and forbidden. Rachel, why are you telling me all this now? Because I'm tired of lying. Tired of pretending. And because you deserve to know the truth. She squeezed his hand. When I saw you walk through that door 3 nights ago, it all came flooding back. Everything I felt for you. Everything I threw away. And I realized that I've spent 5 years running from the biggest mistake of my life. What was the mistake? Not telling me about the pregnancy. No. Rachel's green eyes locked onto his with an intensity that took his breath away. The mistake was letting you go. The mistake was believing I could ever love anyone the way I loved you. The mistake was thinking I could build a life on a foundation of guilt and fear. James's heart hammered in his chest. Rachel, you're married. You have a baby. I know. And that's why what I'm about to tell you is so complicated. Rachel took a shaky breath. James, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Anything. Do you still have feelings for me? After everything I did, after all these years, is there any part of you that still cares? The question hung between them like a live wire. James knew that his answer would change everything. He could lie, protect himself from potential heartbreak, maintain professional boundaries. Or he could tell the truth. Rachel, I've thought about you every single day for 5 years. I've compared every woman I've dated to you. I've wondered 1,000 times what I did wrong, why I wasn't enough. He paused, his voice rough with emotion. So yes. Against all logic and self-preservation, I still care. I never stopped. A shocking revelation. Rachel's tears flowed freely now. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve a second chance. But James, there's something else you need to know. Something that changes everything. What is it? Rachel looked down at the sleeping baby in her arms, then back at James. The timeline. When I got pregnant with Oliver. It doesn't match up with when Derek and I were together. James felt his pulse quicken. What do you mean? Derek and I had been separated for 3 months before we reconciled. He had been having an affair with his assistant. When I found out, I moved out and filed for divorce. Rachel's voice shook. During that separation, I was a mess. Drinking too much, making terrible decisions. And one night, I went to a medical conference fundraiser in Boston. James's mouth went dry. Rachel. I saw you there. You were giving a presentation on emergency trauma care. You looked so confident, so accomplished. Everything your mother had wanted for you. And I realized that her prediction had come true. You had achieved your dreams without me holding you back. But I didn't see you at the conference. I know. Because I couldn't work up the courage to approach you. Instead, I went to the hotel bar and drank way too much whiskey. And then I met someone who looked enough like you to make my alcohol-soaked brain think fate was giving me a second chance. Understanding dawned on James like a cold sunrise. Who, Rachel? Who did you meet? The truth comes out. Your brother. I met your younger brother, Connor Mitchell. The name exploded in James's mind like a bomb. Connor. His brother, who lived in Seattle, who was also a doctor, who had been in Boston 9 months ago for a conference. Connor, who looked remarkably similar to James but was 3 years younger. I didn't realize who he was at first, Rachel continued rapidly, as if getting the words out before she lost courage. We talked for hours. He told me about his work in Seattle, about his family. I was drunk and hurting and he was kind. One thing led to another, and we spent the night together. Jesus, Rachel. James stood up, pacing the small room. The next morning, when I sobered up, I realized what I had done. I left before he woke up. I didn't leave my real name or number. 3 weeks later, I discovered I was pregnant. Rachel's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Derek and I had reconciled by then. He assumed the baby was his. The dates were close enough that it could have been. But deep down, I knew. Does Connor know? No. I never told him. I never told anyone. Rachel looked at Oliver with infinite sadness. This beautiful baby boy is your nephew, James. He's your brother's son. And the only father he knows is a man who cares more about his stock portfolio than his own child. James sank back into the chair, his mind spinning. Oliver wasn't just any baby. He was family. His own flesh and blood. And Rachel, the woman he had never stopped loving, had unknowingly connected their lives again through the most complicated circumstances imaginable. "What are you going to do?" James finally asked. "I'm going to leave Derek. I've already contacted a divorce lawyer. I can't stay in that marriage anymore, baby or no baby." Rachel's voice grew stronger. "And I'm going to tell Connor the truth. He deserves to know he has a son. And us?" The question escaped before James could stop it. Rachel met his eyes. "I don't know, James. I don't know if we can ever get back what we lost. I don't know if you can forgive me for the choices I made. But I know that I want to try. If you'll have me. If you can see past the mess I've made of everything. A decision to make." Before James could respond, the door opened. Derek Hayes stood in the doorway, his expensive suit rumpled, his expression dark. "How touching," Derek said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "My wife and her doctor having a cozy late-night chat. Should I be concerned, Dr. Mitchell?" James stood, positioning himself between Derek and Rachel. "Mr. Hayes, visiting hours are over. You should come back in the morning. Don't tell me when I can see my own wife and son." Derek pushed past James and approached the bed. "Rachel, we're going home today. I've arranged for a private nurse and had the house prepared. I'm not going anywhere with you, Derek." Rachel's voice was calm but firm. "I want a divorce." Derek's face turned red. "You want a what?" "A divorce. I'm done, Derek. This marriage is over." "Over?" Derek laughed harshly. "You don't get to decide when this marriage is over. You signed a prenup, remember? You leave me, you get nothing. No money, no house, no support." "I don't care about your money," Rachel said quietly. "I never did." Derek's eyes narrowed dangerously. "This is about him, isn't it?" He gestured at James. "Your ex-boyfriend doctor playing hero. You think he's going to save you? Take you back after you dumped him?" "Mr. Hayes, I'm going to ask you to leave," James said firmly. "Or what? You'll call security?" "I practically own this hospital, Dr. Mitchell. My family has donated millions. One phone call and you'll be looking for a new job. Then make the call." James pulled out his phone and dialed security. "Because right now, you're harassing a patient and causing a disturbance in a hospital ward." The breaking point. 2 security guards arrived within minutes. Derek raged and threatened, but ultimately he was escorted from the building. His parting words echoed down the hallway. "This isn't over, Rachel. You'll regret this. Both of you will." When silence finally returned, Rachel was shaking. James sat beside her on the bed and carefully put his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, and for the first time in 5 years, it felt like coming home. "What have I done?" Rachel whispered. "He's going to make my life hell." "Let him try," James said softly. "You're not alone in this, Rachel. Whatever happens next, you're not alone." Oliver stirred and began to cry softly. Rachel automatically began to rock him, her maternal instincts taking over despite her emotional turmoil. James watched her, his mind racing through the implications of everything he had learned. Rachel wanted a divorce. She was going to tell Connor about Oliver. And she wanted a second chance with him. It was messy, complicated, and potentially disastrous. But as he looked at Rachel holding the baby who was his nephew, James realized something important. Some chances only come around once in a lifetime. And when they do, you have to be brave enough to take them. "Rachel," he said quietly. "Tomorrow, I'm going to call Connor. He needs to hear the truth from me. And then, when the dust settles, if you still want to try again, I'm willing. But we do this right this time. No secrets. No running. Complete honesty. Rachel looked up at him, hope shining through her tears. You mean it? I mean it. But first, you need to rest. You just had major surgery, and the next few weeks are going to be challenging. James stood up. Get some sleep. I'll be back in the morning. As he reached the door, Rachel called out. James. He turned back. Thank you. For everything. For saving us that night. For listening tonight. For not hating me. James smiled sadly. I could never hate you, Rachel. That was never the problem. The problem was that I loved you too much. As James walked down the quiet hospital corridor toward his office, he knew that his life was about to change dramatically. Calling Connor would be one of the hardest conversations he'd ever have. Navigating a potential relationship with Rachel while she went through a messy divorce would be complicated beyond measure. But for the first time in 5 years, James felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel. Hope. The hope that maybe, just maybe, love could survive mistakes, time, and impossible circumstances. The night shift was ending. Dawn was breaking over Boston. And with it came the possibility of new beginnings, the morning after truth. James didn't sleep that night. He sat in his office as the sun rose over Boston, staring at his phone, rehearsing what he would say to Connor. His younger brother. The man who unknowingly had a son. The man whose life was about to be turned completely upside down. At 7 in the morning Seattle time, 9 in Boston, James finally made the call. James. What's wrong? You never call this early. Connor's voice was alert, immediately concerned. The Mitchell brothers had always been close, despite the distance between them. Connor, I need you to sit down. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible, but I need you to hear me out. There was a pause. You're scaring me. Are Mom and Dad okay? They're fine. This isn't about them. This is about you. About a night 9 months ago in Boston. Another pause, longer this time. How do you know about that? So you remember. Connor sighed. There was a woman. At the Marriott bar after the cardiac symposium. We talked for hours. She was beautiful, sad, running from something. We had too much to drink and I thought, just for one night, I could help her forget whatever was hurting her. His voice grew quieter. When I woke up, she was gone. No name, no number, nothing. I've thought about her more than I should. Why are you asking me this? James closed his eyes. Because that woman just had a baby, Connor. A baby boy. And he's yours. The silence that followed was deafening. A brother's reaction. What? Connor's voice was barely a whisper. James, what are you saying? How do you even know about this? Because the woman is Rachel Thompson. My Rachel from college. Oh my God. Connor's breath came fast over the phone. James, I swear I didn't know. If I had known who she was, I never would have. I know. She didn't tell you her real name. She didn't know you were my brother until after. Connor, this isn't your fault. It's not anyone's fault. It just is. I have a son. Connor sounded dazed. I have a son and I didn't even know. What's his name? Oliver. His name is Oliver, and he's perfect. He has our eyes, Connor. The Mitchell family eyes. James could hear movement on the other end. I'm booking a flight right now. I can be in Boston by tonight. Where is Rachel? Where is Oliver? Does she want to see me? She's at St. Mary's Hospital. She had an emergency cesarean a few days ago. And yes, she wants to see you. She wants to tell you everything herself. What about the husband? Rachel's married, right? The records I saw said she was with someone. That's complicated. She's leaving him. Filing for divorce. It's a mess, Connor. Connor laughed, but it was the sound of a man in shock. A mess. James, I just found out I have a 3-day-old son with your ex-girlfriend who's married to someone else. Mess doesn't even begin to cover this. Family matters. There's something else, James said carefully. Mom knew. About Rachel's pregnancy in college. Our pregnancy. What? James explained everything Rachel had told him. Their mother's interference, the pressure she had put on a terrified 22-year-old girl, the choice that had haunted Rachel for 5 years. I can't believe Mom would do that, Connor said, his voice hard. That's not her decision to make. That's not anyone's decision but yours and Rachel's. I know. I'm going to talk to her about it. But right now, the priority is Oliver. He needs his real father in his life. I'm going to be there, James. Whatever it takes. This baby, my son, he's going to know me. He's going to know I want him. Connor's voice broke. I always thought when I had kids, it would be planned. With someone I love. But life doesn't work that way, does it? No, James agreed. Life has its own plans. And you and Rachel? What happens there? James rubbed his face. I don't know. We have a lot to work through. But Connor, I never stopped loving her. And now that I know the truth about why she left, I understand. I don't agree with her choices, but I understand them. Do you think you can forgive her? I think I already have. The reunion. That evening, Connor arrived at St. Mary's Hospital carrying a teddy bear and wearing an expression of pure terror. James met him in the lobby. The brothers hugged tightly. You ready for this? James asked. No. But I'm doing it anyway. They walked together to Rachel's room. She had been moved to a private suite, away from Derek's potential harassment. When they entered, Rachel was sitting in a chair by the window, holding Oliver. She looked up and her eyes widened. Connor, she whispered. Connor crossed the room in 3 strides. For a moment, he just stared at the baby in Rachel's arms. Then his eyes filled with tears. May I? He asked softly. Rachel nodded and carefully transferred Oliver to his father's arms. Connor held his son for the first time, and the expression on his face was one of pure wonder. Hi, Oliver, Connor said, his voice choked with emotion. I'm your dad. I know I wasn't there when you were born, but I'm here now. And I'm never going anywhere. Oliver yawned and grabbed Connor's finger with his tiny hand. Connor laughed through his tears. He's strong, Connor said, looking at Rachel. And he's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for bringing him into the world. Rachel wiped her own tears. I'm so sorry, Connor. Sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Sorry I ran away that morning. Sorry for all of it. Hey, Connor said gently. We both made choices that night. And those choices gave us this incredible little person. I'm not sorry for that. James watched the scene from across the room, his heart full of a strange mixture of emotions. Joy for his brother. Tenderness for Rachel. And a deep, abiding love for the tiny baby who had managed to bring them all together in the most unexpected way. Facing the consequences. The next few days were a whirlwind. Connor found an apartment in Boston, determined to be close to his son. Rachel's divorce lawyer filed papers, and Derek's response was predictably aggressive. He hired the most expensive lawyer in Boston and vowed to fight for custody of Oliver. But then Rachel's lawyer played a card that changed everything. A paternity test. If Derek wanted custody, he would have to prove Oliver was his son. Derek's lawyer called 2 days later. Their client was dropping all claims to the child and agreeing to a quiet, quick divorce. Apparently, Derek's pride couldn't handle the public revelation that the child he'd claimed as his wasn't biologically his. Rachel was freed out of mother's reckoning. James finally confronted his mother on a cold afternoon in her elegant home in Beacon Hill. Dr. Patricia Mitchell sat in her living room, her face pale as James recounted everything he had learned. "You had no right," James said, his voice shaking with controlled anger. "No right to make that choice for us. No right to manipulate Rachel when she was vulnerable and scared." Patricia's hands trembled as she set down her teacup. "I thought I was protecting you. Medical school is demanding. A baby would have derailed everything you worked for. That wasn't your call to make, Mom. And look at what it cost us. 5 years of pain. 5 years of wondering what went wrong. Rachel lived with guilt and grief because you made her believe loving me meant letting me go. I'm sorry." Patricia's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, James. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being a good mother. A good mother supports her son's choices. She doesn't make them for him." James stood. "Rachel and I are going to try again. And Connor is going to be in his son's life. I need you to accept that. I need you to respect our decisions." Patricia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I will. I promise. Whatever you need from me, I'll do it. I'll apologize to Rachel. I'll welcome her and Oliver into this family." "Good. Because they are family now. And they're not going anywhere. The question that matters." 2 weeks after Oliver's birth, James took Rachel to their old college campus. They walked through the quad where they used to meet between classes, past the library where they studied for exams, to the small garden where James had first told Rachel he loved her. It was late afternoon, and the setting sun painted everything in golden light. Oliver slept peacefully in his stroller as Connor walked a respectful distance behind, giving James and Rachel privacy but staying close to his son. "Do you remember this place?" James asked. "Of course," Rachel said softly. "This is where everything began. I thought it might be a good place for a new beginning." James took both of Rachel's hands in his. "Rachel, we've been through hell. We've made mistakes, kept secrets, hurt each other. But through it all, one thing never changed. I love you. I've always loved you. James." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not asking for everything at once. I know you need time to heal from Derek, from everything you've been through. But I'm asking for a chance. A real chance this time. No secrets, no running. Just us, figuring it out together. What about Oliver? What about Connor? Oliver is part of our lives now, whether we're together or not. Connor is his father, and I'm his uncle. We'll work out the details together, as a family. But what I need to know is whether you want this. Whether you want us." Rachel looked at him, this man who had saved her life, who had listened without judgment, who had stood by her through the most chaotic weeks of her existence. And she knew the answer had never really been in doubt. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I want us. I want everything. The messy, complicated, beautiful everything." James pulled her close and kissed her. It was a kiss 5 years in the making, filled with forgiveness, hope, and the promise of tomorrow. Connor, watching from his position by a nearby bench, smiled and looked down at his sleeping son. "Your uncle and your mom are pretty special people, Oliver. And you, little guy, you brought everyone back together. That's quite a superpower for a 2-week-old." 6 months later. The apartment James and Rachel now shared overlooked the Charles River. It was filled with the organized chaos of new parenthood, with Connor visiting 3 times a week to spend time with Oliver. They had worked out a co-parenting arrangement that surprised everyone with how well it functioned. Connor was fully involved in Oliver's life, handling nighttime feedings when he stayed over, changing diapers, reading bedtime stories to a baby too young to understand them but who seemed to love his father's voice anyway. Rachel had started working at a small environmental law firm, doing the work she had always dreamed of. James continued at St. Mary's, though he had cut back his hours to spend more time at home. And slowly, carefully, James and Rachel rebuilt what they had lost. They went on dates. They talked about the past without blame. They made plans for the future without fear. One evening, as they sat on their balcony watching the sunset, Oliver asleep on Rachel's shoulder, James spoke. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come to St. Mary's that night? If some other doctor had delivered Oliver?" Rachel considered the question. "Sometimes. But then I think maybe it was always meant to happen this way. Maybe we needed to lose each other to appreciate what we had. Maybe Oliver needed to come into the world to bring us all back together." "A matchmaking baby," James said with a smile. "The best kind," Rachel agreed. James reached over and took her free hand. "I'm glad you came back, Rachel. I'm glad we got our second chance." "Me too," she whispered. "Me too." The promise of tomorrow. Connor arrived an hour later to take Oliver for the weekend. He had fully embraced fatherhood, attending parenting classes, baby-proofing his apartment, boring his colleagues with endless photos and stories. "You guys have plans?" Connor asked as he carefully placed Oliver in his car seat. "Dinner and a movie," James said. "Revolutionary, I know. Hey, treasure these quiet moments. In a few years, this little guy will be running circles around all of us." Connor kissed Oliver's forehead. "Say bye to Mom and Uncle James, buddy." After they left, Rachel turned to James. "Uncle James. It still sounds weird sometimes. But it works," James said. "We make it work." And they did. Their unconventional family thrived in ways none of them could have predicted. Patricia Mitchell, true to her word, had apologized to Rachel and become a devoted grandmother to Oliver.